Hello students, loving welcome to English Literature Classroom. You know that we have two textbooks in English Literature. One is The Merchant of Venice, which is a drama, and the other one is Treasure Trove, which has both poems and short stories. Today, we are going to discuss the second poem in the poetry section of Treasure Trove, The Cold Within, written by James Patrick Kinney. Before we learn the poem, it is important to know about the poet. James Patrick Kinney is an Irish-American poet who wrote this poem in the 1960s. Let us know the reason behind writing this poem. From 1954 to 1968, African-American civil rights movement was going on. You know that whites were treating the blacks cruelly, very cruelly. Discrimination in the name of race was high, and Kinney, being a man of integrity, was outraged, that is, extremely furious to see the inhuman, discriminatory attitudes. The situation prompted him to think deeply, and this resulted in writing the poem, The Cold Within, that spoke his heart. The poem can be called as a poetic parable because he uses a narrative style of writing, through which he wanted to convey a powerful message that we should not become slaves of bigotry, that is racism and prejudice. He wanted all people to be treated equally, and he was a man who went ahead to upturn the law that no blacks could be out after dark on streets. He was a man of integrity and believed in universal brotherhood and lived a life of principles, and as he mentioned, in the cold within. Now, before we go to the poem, I want you to think of these two words. When we describe people, we say, oh, he's a warm-hearted person. What does it mean? It means that the person is very caring, he cares about others, helps others, makes others feel comfortable, shares his resources with others, etc. On the other hand, what kind of a person is a cold-hearted person? We mean that he is least bothered about others, selfish, no sympathy or generosity, doesn't share his things with others. Now, what is the result of being warm-hearted? Naturally, you become happy and prosperous. But if you're a cold-hearted person, then the consequence is sadness and destruction, self-destruction, we can call it so. Now that you have understood the difference between a cold-hearted person and a warm-hearted person, I hope all of you want to become a warm-hearted person, right? But in this poem, you come across 6 such cold-hearted people who, though together in a group, do not help each other and finally die due to their cold nature. That is, discriminative attitude on grounds of race, religion, caste, etc. Now, let us see the summary of the poem. The poem, The Cold Within, consists of 8 stanzas. It uses simple language, but carries a very profound message. The poem tells us the story of the tragic death of a group of 6 men. Now, where are these 6 people? They're trapped in a very cold climatic region. Each one is having a log of wood in their hands. And there is a fire in front of them. The fire is dying. What should they do? They should put the log which they possess into the fire. But they are not ready to do so. Why? The reason is their hearts are filled with selfishness, prejudice, malice, hatred, suspicions, anger towards each other. And these negative traits were controlling them. Finally, what happens? They all die holding their logs in their hands. The reason is cold within them. The coldness within them kills them. Now, let us read a poem. Six humans trapped by happenstance in bleak and bitter cold. Each one possessed a stick of wood, or so the story is told. Their dying fire in need of logs, the first one held hers back. For of the faces round the fire, she noticed one was black. The next man, looking across the way, saw one not of his church, and could not bring himself to give the fire his stick of birch. The third one sat in tattered clothes. He gave his coat a hitch. Why should his log be put to use? To warm the idle rich. The rich man just sat back and thought of the wealth he had in store and how to keep what he had earned from the lazy, shiftless poor. Black man's face bespoke revenge as the fire passed from his side. But all he saw in a stick of wood was a chance to spite the white. The last man of this forlorn crew did not accept for gain. Giving only to those who gave was how he played the game. Their logs held tight in with still hands was proof of human sin. They did not die from the cold without, they died from the cold within. Now, let us focus on the first stanza. You see that it opens to a bleak tableau. Six men are trapped by chance, happenstance, by chance, in a pale and severe cold region. The word trap tells that there's no escape from this place. The environment is dark and bitter cold. It must be a severe winter time. The words bleak and bitter arouses an ominous feeling. That is, something bad is going to happen. What does each one of them hold in their hands? Each has a log in possession. Now, this is the setting of the story, and the story is narrated against this background. Let us move to the second stanza. The fire is dying, and to continue burning, what should they do? They should add the logs in their hands to the fire. You know that there is no scarcity of logs, which is the resource they have, and each one can put the log into the fire so that the fire will keep burning and they can warm themselves. However, the response is different. Look at the first person. The first one, what did she do? The woman, very indifferent. Her response is very indifferent. And she holds her log back. Why? Just because she notices that there is one black-skinned person in the group. Now, what does this indicate? indicates that she is controlled by racial prejudice. She doesn't want to use a log as it would benefit a black person. Because of a racial discrimination, she loses her reasoning power. That is, if she puts the log into the fire, she can save herself while saving others. But she loses a reasoning power because of a racial discrimination. Let's move on to the third stanza. The next man, what is his response? He sees a man who belonged to a different religious community, different belief system. And just because of that, he can't bear to give up his log to the communal fire. This is called as religious bigotry, which speaks of the intolerance to a person because they do not share the same opinions or ideas. I hope you understood the third stanza. Now let's move to the fourth stanza. In the fourth stanza, we see a poor man. How do we know that he's a poor man? Because from his appearance, he is wearing tattered clothes, old and torn clothes, the cold weather, which give us a hint at his poverty. He perhaps felt the cold more than others, as we notice that he gave his coat a hitch, that is, a pull, adjusting it closer to his body to get some warmth from the inadequate clothing. But here too, he doesn't put the log into the fire. Why? Because he sees a rich person there in the group. So, what do we understand about him? He is a victim of classism, that is discrimination based on social or economic class. He believed that the rich take advantage of poor people like him, make them work hard, and the rich remain idle. In his eyes, rich doesn't deserve his law. So he will not part with the stick. He is not only poor literally, but also poor at heart. This is what we have to understand from this. Now, in the next stanza, who is the fourth human mentioned here? The rich man. The rich man. His greedy mind thinks about the wealth he had in store and thinks of plans how to safeguard it from the lazy and aimless poor. That is what the rich people think about the poor. So he holds on to his stick selfishly. Thus, he also exhibits lack of concern, apathy. This is commonly found among the rich who has a light ego, that is the ego as he belongs to the rich class in the society. Now, next stanza, the fifth person mentioned is a black man whose face is full of revenge. He has a revengeful attitude towards the white due to the abuses he and his community had to face due to racism. He finds this opportunity to take revenge upon the white. He also lets the group's fire die. He doesn't mind dying, but he wants the white to die with him. So he holds back his log of food. Here, what do we understand? We understand that he also becomes the victim of his revengeful attitude. So, doesn't have the spark of kindness in him. Now, moving to the next stanza. In this stanza, The poet describes the attitude of the last person in the forlorn group. Forlorn group means lonely group, sad and lonely group. Because why do we call the group, why does the poet call the group forlorn? Because though the six people are together, they have enough possibilities to help each other. They are indifferent to each other as each one is ruled by selfishness. The person described here, like any other common man, is very materialistic and gives only to those who give him something back in return. So, because of his selfish attitude, he refuses to give up his law to save the dying fire, and is also going to lose the game of life like others. Let's move to the last stanza of the poem. The last stanza, we witness that all the six people die holding the log tightly in their hands. The tragic end is the result of their rigid nature. That is, they themselves are the cause of their death. Nothing but a proof of human sin. The sin here refers to the human sin they committed. That is, the disobedience to the God's commandment. That is, love thy neighbor as thyself. The last two lines tell that is, they did not die from the cold without. That is the climatic condition, extreme cold climatic condition outside, but they died from the cold within. Thus, it is the coldness in their hearts that killed them. The hearts devoid of qualities like sharing, caring, and compassion. There is no warmth in human relationships here. You can see. That is, the cold within stills their body forever. The humane qualities were totally absent, and their hearts are filled with anger, envy, prejudice, ego, miserliness, which led to their death. So, the poem as a whole gives us a powerful reminder that if we have these negative traits, like the six people in the poem, hold on to the world's resources selfishly without sharing, we are all lost. Now that you have understood the meaning of the poem, let us see the appropriateness of the title. Here the poet means that the coldness of the heart, that is the lack of warmth and compassion in the six persons, six humans who gathered around the fire, dying fire in that winter evening. Though all of them possessed a log of wood, none agreed to give it to the fire to keep it burning and keep them warm. This was because of the discriminatory attitude they had against each other over petty things like class, caste, color, religious faith, or ethnicity. In the end, they were found frozen to death with their locks held in the still hands. The black and the white, the rich and the poor, all are guided by animosity against each other. Therefore, the title is appropriate as the poet commented that the death was not due to the cold outside. It was the cold within their hearts that killed them. Now, let us see the poetic devices used by the poet to make the poem more impactful and effective. The poets use poetic devices. Now, what is the rhyme scheme used here? A, B, C, B. That is, in each stanza, the second line rhymes with the fourth line. Now, alliteration. The sound "b" is repeated in bleak and bitter. "P" is repeated in four of the faces round the fire. Now the next figure of speech used here is personification. In the line, their locks held tight in death's still hands. Death is personified here. Now, the next one is oxymoron. Oxymoron is a figure of speech in which apparently contradictory terms appear in conjunction. See, look at this. Forlorn group. Forlorn means lonely. Group means togetherness. It indicates togetherness. But here, each man is having different attitude. They are indifferent to each other. That is why it is called as the forlorn group. In this slide, we will look at the theme, the main themes of the poem, Old Wedding. The first one is futility of discrimination. Futility means uselessness, and discrimination means treating people differently because they belong to different class or category rather than individual merit. So this is called as partiality, prejudice, bigotry, etc. Now these are the following points. Hatred humans have for each other because of the difference in their belief systems, class, then rich and the poor, etc. The second one is it projects the discrimination based on class, religion, etc. And each one in this group has belonged to different class, religion. That is why they hate each other. Next point is they have got prejudice against each other as they had come from the different backgrounds and religion. Then, but is there any use for this? This proves futile as it is due to this that they don't help each other. So, finally, none of them survive. They die due to their cold-heartedness and not due to the cold weather condition outside. The next theme is, second theme is lack of warmth in human relations. The six people represent the entire humanity. All of them are going through different difficult situation, very difficult situation. Still, their minds are possessed by revenge, spite, anger, envy, etc. Now, due to that, they show lack of warm, humane feelings like compassion and empathy. Though they are in a group, they cannot cooperate with each other. Actually, they have a lot of scope and they can survive. They can help each other and survive. They can put the logs in position into the fire. Just a small action is enough. But they do not do so because of the differences. Their differences surpass their survival instincts. Now, the lack of warmth is expressed in the following lines. Their dying fire in need of logs. Literally, it refers to the fire that is dying due to the lack of logs. But metaphorically, it means the fire of compassion in the heart is dying because there is no positive action from the side of the group. So children, we must understand that a society which has cold-hearted people like six humans can only have disastrous consequences. The poet also conveys a message that living in harmony is the only way to build up a happy society. Thank you.